President Trump really said that because more pregnant women are taking Tylenol and the rates of autism have increased, that therefore there is an associated risk with pregnant women taking Tylenol and the likelihood of them having a child with autism spectrum disorder. And as a Trump supporter getting their PhD in special education who does research, this is probably the worst interpretation of research findings I have ever heard in my entire life. I want to know what confounding variables were accounted for in these small-scale studies where you were able to isolate and confirm that Tylenol was the sole contributing factor in determining whether or not those children were going to be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I want to know how you accounted for it not being the fever, that biological precursors were not a factor, that genetic mutations were not a factor, that environmental factors were, I would like to know that. And then you realize it's dangerous to generalize findings from a small-scale study to an entire population of individuals that are considered a fragile demographic. Pregnant women and individuals with autism spectrum disorder. There are rules to generalization for a reason. And then to say, well, the Amish, they don't get medicine, they don't get vaccines, and they don't have any cases of autism. Yeah, so if you don't take your kid to the doctor, there's no way they can get a medical diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. So if an entire community practices that, what makes you think there would ever be a case that would emerge where that would be documented? And I know Trump's not a researcher, but you are presenting information before the entire country. And something I'm told as a PhD student before I disseminate my research findings and go before conferences or in lecture halls is that it should be clear that you rehearsed this, right? Who says very increase? And then, bro, you should know the words you're saying and how to say them when you're presenting on a topic. Acetaminophen. Ugh. This was not a good look. Honestly, be so for real.